Hey guys, how's it going? This is Watch, and in this video we're doing a direct hands-on comparison between the Sony Xperia Z3 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. So if you're interested in getting one of these top flagship smartphones, this will kind of give you a good idea in terms of determining which one is right for you. So let's get right into it. Now, the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the physical design and overall dimensional differences between these two smartphones. Now, the Sony Xperia Z3 measures about 146 millimeters in terms of its height and 72 millimeters in terms of its width. Now, the Note 4 is certainly the larger phone because it has a larger display and everything, measuring about 153.5 millimeters in terms of its height and about 78.6 millimeters in terms of its width. Now, in terms of thickness, the Sony Z3 is one of the thinnest Android smartphones right now, only measuring 7.3 millimeters versus the Note 4's 8.5 millimeters. And in terms of weight, it's also one of the lightest smartphones, measuring only about 152 grams versus the 176 grams that the Galaxy Note 4 weighs. Now, in terms of form factor and overall design and pocketability, obviously the Z3 is a little bit more pocketable. It has a slightly smaller footprint. It's very in tune of what the Samsung Galaxy S5 is in terms of form factor. So you usually won't have any big issues fitting this in your pocket. Although if you're coming from a smaller phone or maybe an older phone or something like that, both of these are really considered giant phones. Now, the Note 4 is certainly one of the largest smartphones out right now, with one of the largest screen sizes, about 5.7 inches versus the 5.2 inch display that's on the Z3. Now, basically, when you're holding both of these two phones in your hand, they both feel very premium. They really feel like the manufacturers took some time in terms of design and making sure that they're at the highest quality possible, and there's certainly no cutting corners over here. The designs are really quite flawless, and in terms of both regards, the Samsung Note 4 is one of the highest build quality Note series of devices Samsung has ever made. Certainly with that nice metal band around it and that kind of faux leather feel, definitely adds a nice grip that adds some comfort to an overall large and cumbersome phone. Now, the Z3 is made of really high quality metal and polycarbonate plastic materials. It has a nice rounded overall look towards it. Both the front and back corners are rounded, so it feels very comfortable in the hand, and the overall button layout and placement is done very well. Sony is definitely thinking of everyone over here when they're designing the smartphone, but obviously it favors medium to larger size hands. Now, another interesting aspect about the design of the Z3 is taking a look at the back of the device. You can see that it actually has a glass back, which is good for durability and the overall kind of cool look, but I do notice that it is pretty much a fingerprint magnet, so be definitely aware of that. Another cool aspect about the Z3 that I also like is that it has a dedicated camera button, which is excellent. You just hold down that button and it'll pop up the camera no matter where you are in the phone, or even if the phone is turned off. Now, durability wise, one big difference over here is that the Sony Z3 is one of the most durable smartphones out right now, mainly because Sony was the first manufacturer to really embrace the whole IP67 and IP68 certification. Now, this is IP68 certified, so that means it's dust and water resistant. It's water resistant down to 1 meter for 30 minutes. It's up there with the best smartphones out there, so you can definitely drop it in water and have no issues with it. Now, the Note 4 doesn't have any weatherproofing. You can get it in rain and things like that, and nothing will really fry on you, but it certainly doesn't have any of those certifications that the Sony Xperia Z3 has. Now, let's move on to one of the primary reasons why you would select either of these phones, and that's really has to do with the display. These days, the display has to be pretty much out of the ballpark in terms of features and overall experience, and both these two phones really exemplify that notion quite well. Now, the Z3 has a 1920 by 1080 display, which is unfortunate. That's the same thing that you found in the last generation, the Sony Xperia Z2. So that means that it has the same PPI count of about 424, which is certainly not bad. Really, anything that's over 400 PPI is going to look insanely sharp, and it's very hard to tell the difference in the naked eye when you're viewing it in a kind of everyday environment. Unless you're right there with a magnifying glass, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Now, one of the big things about the Samsung Note 4's display is that it has a quad resolution display, 2560 by 1440, 5.7 inches in terms of a dimension, and giving it a very high PPI of about 515. Now, certainly, as I mentioned before, the PPI, anything over 400 is hard to kind of describe, but there is something about that large overall screen size, which is not too much larger, but that slightly larger screen size definitely gives it some sort of intangible impression that if you see it in real life, you'll know what I'm talking about. Basically, if you see this phone in real life, you'll know what I'm talking about in terms of the viewing experience. Now, in terms of colors, both of them can represent 16 million colors. The Super AMOLED display technology on the Note 4 can produce better black levels and overall vibrancy. The Sony Z3 has a couple of tricks up its sleeve in terms of signal processing technology. It has the triluminous display and the X-Reality engine, which is basically a technology that they use for their televisions to make things look more contrasty, more vibrant, and more saturated. Now, in terms of color accuracy and things like that, both can be adjusted to make things look a little bit more realistic, but obviously you want to look at colors and the overall images as vibrant and as vivid as possible, which gives the impression of kind of a better image. Now, if I had to pick which display I like the best, it'd be a very tough call, but at the end, I think the Note 4 would edge it out, mainly because of its larger, slightly larger screen display, the Super AMOLED, organic LED technology, and that insane level of black levels that you get on that screen, not to mention that Quad HD resolution. But the Z3 is certainly excellent for 99% of people out there, and there are certainly no major complaints in terms of that screen and display technology. Internally, both phones have the micro SD expansion slot, so you can upgrade the internal memory by 128 gigabytes, and in terms of RAM, they both have 3 gigabytes of RAM, so they can really keep up with each other in terms of multitasking capabilities and different applications that are resource intensive. Now, the CPUs on them are a little bit different. The Z3 is using the last generation of Snapdragon processor, the 801 chip. That's a quad-core processor clocked in about 2.5 gigahertz versus the latest generation of the Snapdragon chip, the 805 on the Note 4, is clocked in about 2.7 gigahertz. Now, the Note 4 also comes in an Exynos 8-core processor, which consists of 2 quad-core CPUs clocked in about 1.3 gigahertz, the other one clocked in about 1.9 gigahertz. Now, in terms of our benchmark results, looking at Geekbench 3 first, on the single core score, we get about 968 and 2658 on the Z3, and the Note 4 is definitely faster in both regards, 1257 on the single core score, and about 4027 on the multi-core score. So definitely a big improvement of what the 801 Snapdragon chip can do in the Z3. It's kind of a shame that the Z3 doesn't have it, because there is a pretty big resulting difference from the upgraded 805 chip on the Note 4. Now, another benchmark that we did is the Antutu benchmark. So here you can see that there is quite a big difference. We get about 47,789 on the Note 4, which is a massive difference to the almost about 40,000 score that we get on the Z3. So a pretty massive difference in terms of what the graphical performance and what the difference between the 805 and the 801 Snapdragon processor can really do. It's certainly a big improvement. So therefore, we can definitely determine that the Snapdragon 805 chip that's in the Note 4 is definitely significantly faster than the one found in the Z3. But keep in mind that technically, when you're doing simple things like your day-to-day tasks and using different applications, if you're not a heavy-duty user, you're probably going to not have any big benefit between the 805 compared to the 801. But certainly, if you're in it for bragging rights, the Z3 can't really hold up as well as the Note 4. Now let's talk about some of the individual features that I like about each phone. Starting with the Note 4, it's one of the most jam-packed, feature-rich smartphones available right now. It has a fingerprint scanner, which you can use to unlock the phone and use as your password for PayPal and other kinds of apps. It has a heart rate monitor at the back, so you can use that coincide the S Health app, which monitors your day-to-day walking and running activities. So that works really well. Furthermore, you still have that S Pen, which is the stylus that you can write handwritten notes with and do a whole bunch of different things in the OS itself. It has further levels of pressure sensitivity, so you can get more natural, fluid, handwritten notes, as well as enabling some different features based on whatever application you're using. So it's definitely very handy, maybe not as intuitive as using your fingers, but certainly something nice to use if you want more precision in your work. The other cool thing is that the Note 4 has a couple of ways for you to do multi-window multitasking mode. It obviously has the standard tile view for just browsing through the different applications that's running in your background, which is kind of has an updated look, as well as split screen multitasking mode, which works both in landscape and portrait mode. And the new feature for this year is the pop-up free to move multitasking mode, which basically allows you to pop up windows for your apps, much like you would do in a standard desktop OS, and basically move them around and resize them freely. And you can have many of these app-based windows in your smartphone, really taking advantage of that larger screen size and that higher resolution. Now, one criticism that some people may have with the Samsung line of products, especially the Note series, is that it has so many dang features that it really gets overwhelming for people that just want to use a smartphone for basic things. Now, certainly there's always advantage in terms of having higher specs and having larger lists of feature sets, but certainly Samsung could be a manufacturer that overdoes things sometimes. Now, the experience you get on the Z3 is certainly more subdued than what you get on the Note 4, mainly because of the skin is not as heavily as modified as TouchWiz is, so Sony is trying to give you a little bit more of a pure and simpler Android experience, which is excellent for newer users. Additionally, Sony is not trying to cram as many features as physically possible to make feature sets more rich and longer. Really what they're trying to do is just make a solid smartphone that is easy to use, well built, and can do everything you need, but still has the potential to grow and learn as you're getting more and more familiar with the phone. That being said, of course, I do like a couple of unique features in terms of what the Sony Z3 can do, which is new for this year. The first one is that it has an excellent speakers. They're stereo speakers and they're right at the front, and they're probably second best to the HTC One M8. So let's go ahead and take a look at the difference between the two speakers, and you'll see what I mean. Furthermore, another unique attribute about the Z3 is that it actually can be used wearing gloves. So it actually has a mode where you can select, and enabling that, you can wear pretty heavy-duty gloves and still use the phone, which is excellent if you live in a cold weather environment. Additionally, one of the cool things is that if you own a PS4, you can enable remote play on the new lineup of Z3 tablets and smartphones. So that basically means your Sony Xperia Z3 becomes a PlayStation 4. You can attach it to your PlayStation 4 controller, the DualShock 4, and they sell an attachment for that. But even if you don't have that attachment, you could basically just connect it to the same Wi-Fi network and play your PlayStation 4 games. The experience is absolutely sensational and really one of those killer apps if you have a PlayStation 4. Now, moving forward, taking a look at the actual phone component itself, we still have to consider that these are two phones and they can make phone calls and receive phone calls. And in terms of that, they both are pretty equal. They have noise canceling technology, so they can isolate any background noise, so the microphone picks up just your voice itself, making it easier for the other person on the line to hear you better. And I've had really good experiences with the actual call quality itself. I'm using it on the same network, and these are two unlocked phones. So therefore, if you're going to use either of these phones just for making phone calls, you're definitely not going to be disappointed. Now, looking at the connectivity itself, both are worldwide available phones, so they can work on international bandwidths at the highest level of LTE speeds available on your network. And in terms of connecting to your Wi-Fi networks, both have AC compatibility for dual band Wi-Fi routers and networks, and they have NFC and the latest generation of Bluetooth 4.0 technology. Now, I think these days, the two major features of any smartphone are definitely going to be the display, which we talked about already, and both have excellent displays, but really it's going to come down to how do the cameras perform. Most people are going to use these things as perhaps their dedicated camera, so they have to be really outstanding, and in both cases, Both smartphones have really industry-leading camera technologies. Looking at the front-facing camera itself, you can see that the Sony Xperia Z3 has a 2.2 megapixel sensor, which is decent for photos, but it can also do 1080p at 30 frames per second. The Note 4, on the other hand, has a slightly higher resolution sensor, about 3.7 megapixels, and 1080p at 30 frames per second, but it also has a wider field of view, so if you do a lot of selfies using the front-facing cameras or video conferencing, I think both phones are very comparable, but the Note 4 definitely has a wider field of view with a higher resolution image capability, so a little bit of an edge on the Note 4 there in terms of the front-facing camera. Now, turning it over to the back side, we do have a different story over here. Basically, the Z3 has the best rear-facing camera right now in terms of the current lineup of smartphones. It has a 20.7 megapixel sensor, which is absolutely insane, versus the 16 megapixel sensor on the Note 4. Now, the Note 4 has optical image stabilization, which is going to give you a little bit more steadier videos and photos. So if you're shooting in low light, you're going to get a little bit more smoother and sharper looking images, as well as your video results are going to be a little bit more smoother. Now, the Sony has its own stabilization technology that they've kind of patented with their camcorders, and they're using some of that technology inside the camera itself. So for videos and stuff like that, you also get pretty decent smooth results. We'll take a look at a side-by-side difference in a little bit. But in terms of the video capturing capabilities, both can do 4K at 30 frames per second, and they can record higher frame rates like 120 frames per second at 720p. So they're both pretty matched in terms of the video specifications. So let's go ahead and take a look at the cameras side by side to see which top tier smartphone has the best image quality. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is one of the standout features between these two phones, and that has to be considering the battery life. Now, the battery life on the Sony Xperia Z3 is certainly well suited for the overall display size and form factor of the phone. They pretty much fit the largest battery capacity that they could cram inside the chassis. It has a 3100 milliamp hour battery, and in terms of battery performance itself, I've used the phone for a couple of days now, and basically I'm consistently getting at least 1.2 days. Now, sometimes I go over 1.5 days where I don't have to really charge the phone, and I can still maintain at least throughout a 12 to 16 hour day cycle, no problem whatsoever. But in terms of sheer performance, I think the Note 4 definitely edges it out. It has probably the best battery performance available in any smartphone. I can even get almost 2 days out of it if I'm a little bit conservative and I don't use the phone as much. Now, I'm typically, in terms of usability, I am a heavy-duty user. I don't use the phone 24/7, but I do pick it up every 5 minutes or so to check email and things like that, and watch the odd video clip and surf the web. So not crazy in terms of usage, but definitely a regular user that uses its phone on a very, very consistent basis. So definitely no issues, at least getting a day and a half and sometimes 2 days if I'm on the battery saving modes that the Note 4 has. Now, one additional cool thing about the Note 4 is that it has a user replaceable battery, much like most of the Samsungs that have been released in the past couple of years. So you can take out the back, remove the battery, and add a new one in. So if you're on the go, you can have a whole bunch of these batteries and never have to charge it potentially. The other cool thing is that it has a new rapid charging technology, which allows you to get from 0 to 50% in less than 30 minutes. I wish every phone had this capability, and certainly Samsung is heading in the right direction with that feature. But on that, guys, that's really it. If you have any specific questions about anything I talked about in this video, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you like the video. That really helps us out. And give me your thoughts and opinions on which phone you like best. Do you think you like the feature-rich features of what the Note 4 has to offer, or more of the subdued and more subtle features on the Sony Xperia Z3? I would love to hear your thoughts. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.